Hello and welcome to this week's big game preview podcast ahead of Ireland's round two showdown with Italy. Joining me tonight, we are lucky to have another fantastic panel. Our first two guests are no strangers to the show, so welcome back, Ulster fan Jack Fogarty and ball handling hooker. Welcome back, lads.
Thanks, Gillo.
It was good to have you on. And this year, we promise to do what no other Irish podcast has to offer, with at least one guest to represent the competing nations in each and every show. So, representing the Azzurri tonight is one lad who is no stranger, having recorded with us before the World Cup last year. Is Fratelli to Rugby podcast host who goes by Italian Rugby Former on Twitter. Welcome back, Mike Petretta. Great to have you on, mate.
Thank you for having me back.
It's always good. It's always good to get a different perspective on things, especially in games like these, because not everyone loves the Euro C as much as the three Irish lads on this particular recording. So it's good to get that side of things. And before we kick off, I'd like to remind YouTube viewers that you can listen to us on the go wherever you get your podcasts and vice versa for audio listeners. But I just want to start really quickly, Mike, by talking about Italy, because since we last spoke, there's been a lot of change, new head coach, slightly different looking team, and dare I say, Benetton, second best team at the URC so far this season. So it feels like there's been a lot of positivity since the World Cup, at least.
Yeah, I think the World Cup was a bit of a sort of a sad realization that if we just keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same result. And there's been a lot of like decent investment in the franchises at the moment. And I think Bortolami, to his credit, asked for more, and he got more from Signor Benetton. So we're cooking, at least on that side of the franchise. And Zebre have made some moves as well this year with the under-20s. They basically went all in on the under-20s and just said, right, okay, let's build from the bottom up. So yeah, it looks like it's moving in the right direction from that side. And hopefully we start seeing it sort of concretize to results in the senior squad. So yeah, it's been an interesting few months, mate.
Absolutely, and it's great to see the progress being made again, because it was pretty disappointing. I know I spoke to your podcast co-host Ottavio post, I think it was either after the French game or New Zealand game, and it was a sense of, well, we could have done something this World Cup, and instead we scraped past Uruguay and got hockeyed, and it wasn't a fair reflection. So to see that progress is great. And as we record, we're a few minutes away from kickoff in Musgrave between the under-20s tie, and the fact that Ireland look at this Italy game has probably been their third toughest game in recent years is another sign of the progress, because they've come on, and eventually it'll lead to results. And I do think they could take someone. Hopefully not this weekend, because I'd be there, but I do think they could take someone in this year's championship.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because the under-20s are starting to, like you said, filter through, and we look at like Lamaro and Yakitsi, their year, and you're starting to see sort of more and more. And actually, you're looking at, the 2021 under-20s with players like Menoncello, Cannone Junior, Garbisi. We're pulling in a lot more players now in the senior squad. So it'll take time to filter through. I mean, one thing that I think is quite important to highlight for those guys who haven't sort of been paying attention to Italy is the average age is 24. They're the youngest and least capped squad in the Six Nations. So, even Steve Borthwick last week was like, "Oh, we got a really young team." They're playing against a younger team last week. So it's one of those where like it will come, the experience, and I think like the World Cup burnt a lot. It was a really important lesson, and it was a horrible lesson to learn, and even from an Italian fan. But if we feel bad about it, the players are going to feel worse. So yeah, I think it's coming, mate. I think we're moving in the right direction. We need both franchises firing off, and we need to work out where we're going wrong with the transition between the under-20s and the elite level in the URC. So that's sort of the missing bit between us and being sort of very competitive at national level, I think.
Absolutely. And again, hopefully we do see it this year, but we'll start this week, as we will for every game, but starting with the home side, which is Ireland, and their match day 23, which was named earlier on today. It reads as follows. Number 15, Hugo Keenan. He's in the back three alongside Calvin Nash and James Lowe. Stuart McCluskey comes in at inside centre to partner Robbie Henshaw. Jack Crowley is given the nod at 10 again, but this time alongside his Munster teammate Craig Casey. The front row sees Andrew Porter and Jan Sheehan packed down alongside Finlay Bealham. It's Joe McCarthy and James Ryan this time around in the second row, Ryan Baird and Jack Conan come into the back row either side of captain for the first time, Kayla Doris, who lines out at open side. And on the subs bench, we have Ronan Kelleher, Jeremy Luckman, Tom O'Toole, Ian Henderson, Jemison Gibson Park, and returning after almost 3 years, I think it's 2.5 years out in the wilderness, Harry Byrne and Jordan Larmer of Leinster, both back in. Jack, we'll start with yourself. What catches your eye from this Irish lineup?
I think just broadly speaking, the amount of changes that are there. I mean, it's very, very un-Andy Farrell-like. I mean, I'm pretty sure
the most for a Six Nations game, I believe, apart from where they went when COVID split it in half, I believe.
Yeah, even a couple of the autumn games and a couple of the summer tours and things like that. They wouldn't even have. I remember Andrew Porter starting against Japan and stuff. A couple of years ago. I think it was like one of those COVID games or limited capacity at Lansdowne, one of those weird ones. But things like that. So obviously Porter's the one who's still there actually, but. Just to see the number of changes from last week, because it is Six Nations, everyone knows that you want to win it. You gotta put your best team out pretty much every week if you can. I mean, we're probably in a nice position in the sense that we have a settled team, we have a settled way of playing, and we've been doing it quite well for the last 2+ years probably. Certainly in the last sort of 12 months there's been there's just that quarter final, if we want to throw that in there just to add a bit of trauma to the pod here. But the one thing that really stands out for me is obviously the Stuart McCluskey inclusion at 12, just because Bundy Aki, probably outside Tyke Byrne, has been the standout player for Ireland, if not very, very much so the standout back. In terms of eye-catching moments. Obviously, no disrespect to Hugo Keenan, but he just seems like he's RoboCop and just doesn't make a mistake ever. So that's the big one for me. I think it's a key position for us, and Stu's been there and done it. So that's, and obviously very, very handy that we have some Ulster inclusion for the first time in a little while.
Week. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
They thought they broke the curse last week, where they thought, the new Ulster players in the 23, that must mean we'll play well, and sure enough, they did indeed. But the performance will dramatically decline now that they've included the likes of McCluskey, O'Toole, and Henderson. So we'll just have to see how they get on, but funnily enough, Ian Henderson's winning his 80th cap, so that'll be a nice moment for him. But there's a load of changes. So the big thing for me is will they get sort of the same level of performance with all those changes? That's kind of that's what I was sort of thinking. I was probably thinking that before. I mean, are we going to get the same level of performance against Italy? Because there's always that lingering in the back of your head, thinking, okay, well, it is Italy. I know it's a bit disrespectful, but you are thinking that just based on usually how the table lines up. But it will be if these guys can still be as accurate with changes and people in different positions and things like that. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is a question mark that has been held over Ireland before, that when they rotated the most was when we seen the weakest performances. You take maybe Fiji in the autumn 2 years ago, that Ireland XV or Ireland A game in the RDS that time, like that's when things look the most disjointed. But you do feel like with Hugo Keenan in there, like Stuart McCluskey is basically a veteran. Finlay Beelan's been there, done that. Hopefully it won't be the same, but there will be a few growing pains, you'd imagine. And Mike, like, this Italian side who caused Ireland problems in this fixture last year when Ireland rotated a small bit, but still at the same time, from an Irish perspective, we feel like there's more than enough there to get the job done. We'll get into that later. What's your takeaways from that Ireland 23?
Yeah, I think looking at the game this past weekend, if we're not effective in slowing your ball down in any means, it's going to be a long day for us, because you guys are so accurate. So last year, I think actually we did do it quite well. We were sort of just trying to make it a bit of a dogfight, and we have to do the same this year, because France showed what happens if you don't. So yeah, I think last year we probably took a lot out of that game. Obviously, like you said, there's some fresh faces this year and some less knowns, I should say, from an Italian perspective in terms of like, you know, people that they clearly would play in the URC week in, week out, but having it in the sort of completely different structure and a completely different team sort of makes that sort of a bit more of an unknown. So yeah, yeah, it's going to be an interesting game for sure from an Italian perspective. There's probably some players that they will be looking to try and sort of slow down quite a lot when they have their hands on the ball, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I did the same thing last week, but there's kind of a couple of players you can point to in terms of Ireland making changes and you know how they're going to go. Like Finlay Bealham, a tight head, is probably one that it's more of a surprise that he was named rather than anything else. But then Tyke Furlong picked up a knock, so I feel like it's maybe not as surprising then as well. And then you know I've listed James Ryan is back in. Can't really say much about him. Caelan Doris goes to 7, but I do feel like with McCarthy and Ryan as the two kind of the heavy cattle second rows, Doris at 7, he won't have to do the same level of heavy lifting as Josh Van der Fleer does, and could probably have a game similar to last week. And you know, Rich McCluskey, Harry Byrne, Jordan Larmour on the bench as well. And BHH, I'll come to you now because there is a couple of standouts that I've listed, and there's a couple of more that you could get into if you want. But in terms of key selection decisions and players, what catches your eye from, say, some that I've given or some of your own?
Yes, like it's an unusually exciting team of selection from the point of view of changes. You know, it's I'm very excited in that the path that Ireland are going down is that we're going to have about 26, 27, 28 players that if they're named in the starting 15 in a must-win game, you just wouldn't bat an eyelid. I think you know, there are rumored niggles for Aki, O'Mahony and Furlong, but I do think McCluskey, Baird and Bealham all are deserving of starts and don't hinder Ireland all that much, you know, and probably will have a net positive on how we play. So it is very exciting from that point of view. I think it's funny that Jack mentioned the World Cup warm-ups because the last time we saw Doris at 7 was against Italy in the very first World Cup warm-up. And actually going back to that team, that was the last time that Henshaw and McCluskey played together in the centres, and Crowley and Casey were at 9 and 10 that day, and it was the exact same back row. So from that point of view, you're hoping, you know, will it be as good as that day? Was that day even that good, considering it was the first day of first game of that series? I think you go back to last year in the Six Nations and having Bundy Aki at 13, and Italy caused us so many problems in that 13 channel. So having an actual outside centre in Robbie Henshaw should be a big deal, and I think that's one of the big focuses for what Ireland should be doing, and nailing that down. And like it's only McCluskey and Henshaw's fifth time playing together, so it could be a weakness, but let's hope it isn't, you know.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be. I was less confident about Bundy at 13 this time last year, or I think that was a round 3 fixture, but then I would be as Robbie. Like Robbie had a really good game last week, so I feel like he could do it again. And like at both sides of the ball, he was really, really solid. And Jack, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I think just again on the sort of the number of changes, all of them are very much kind of next fella up. You know, none of these guys are getting kind of thrown in the deep end. Like we said, you know, Finlay Bealham is second choice. Stuart McCluskey is second and a half choice. You might throw Robbie Henshaw in at 12 if you were in a tight spot because he has that versatility. You know, it's a back row of Baird, Doris, and Conan. You know, those guys are no slouches. So, you know, it's very much like there are a lot of changes, but none of these guys are making their debut or anything like that. So there shouldn't be this level of, oh well, there might be a few errors, there might be a few this and that. You know, it's a it's very much well, next guy up, here you go, which has been the Andy Farrell way. It's not been his way to just kind of throw guys in and be like, well, I'm not going to give caps away. So in that sense, he's kind of sticking by it, even if maybe we would have liked to have seen maybe Tom O'Toole start and have been on the bench, something like that. But still interesting.
Yeah,
absolutely. And can I just jump in there that
go on?
I think in the second round in particular, we've got 4 outstanding options. Like, I'm not 100% sure what the first choice is. Like, we all probably think it's Tyke Byrne and Joe McCarthy. But if you said that Ian Henderson and James Ryan were the starters in the South Africa test this summer, like, bring it on. That's not a concern at all. And I think that's a wonderful place to be in, and it gives us so many options coming off the bench. Like,
and it changes the dynamic of the back row then, because if you can say for this game or going forward, if you want to say go with McCarthy and Henderson as well, 2 strong, heavy, power locks, but also Henderson has the line out speciality. I think he's probably our best line out caller. And then because of that, you can maybe move Doris to 7, or you could play O'Mahony at 7 with Baird and Doris either side. And it just changes things up a small bit. It can just, Ireland are less reliant on, well, we need Van der Fleer there because our second rows are lighter. Well, they're probably playing above their weight at the moment. Statistically, that sheet that did the rounds before the tournament, I don't know how anyone said that any one player was dominating, because they were all off the charts, every single one of them. Like, it was one of those things. So
it's funny, isn't it, Caelan, just on that sort of cut across, but I think one of the things, this back row is probably much heavier than last weekend, because again, Josh Van der Fleer is not there. Josh Van der Fleer is probably just kicking 100 kgs, but maybe even less, I don't know. But this one very much feels like, oh, they must be playing, Tyke Byrne and James Ryan maybe in the row, but to have Joe McCarthy and James Ryan in there, it's kind of like, that's a big enough second row anyway. You could have a few little speedy back rows in there. But then again, you've got Ryan Baird, who can probably stick on the wing or even inside centre, and he probably did a good job for you. So,
I mean, who says we don't go into 2027 with Thomas Ahern and Ryan Baird, not as our flankers, but as our 12 and 13? Like, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. It could happen. And it might just be my dream. Go on.
That gives us so many options on the bench. Like, we can go 6-2 with Baird or Ahern, and like, we're laughing,
7-1, not been done before.
8-0.
We're going 8-0. Who cares?
I do want to just highlight Caelan Doris at 7. Josh Van der Fleer has played open side, like, has been the number 1 open side on the depth chart for a long time, and it's not 100% sure who number 2 is. I think when we saw Nick Timoney get the inclusion in the squad, it might have been him, and now Doris is playing at 7. So I was really impressed with him in the autumn when he played there. And if he goes well again, like, maybe that opens up the competition between Conan and Van der Fleer just to get into the starting back row. So that could be something that gives us a lot of options, but at the same time, you want to see some depth building behind at number 7.
I think we could see Doris move to 7 long term, and I'm not trying to retire Josh Van der Fleer early or anything of the sorts, but like, you look at the players we have coming through, and when you've got, Ryan Baird is probably the 6th that's next in line. Thomas Ahern's a very similar type player. Keane Prendergast is a bulkier number 8. He's ready to go. And then you got the likes of like Ryan Gleeson, James Culhan coming through in recent years. The mold seems to be very similar at 6 and 8. Moving Doris to 7, maybe going for a lighter 7 like we did before Van der Fleer bulked up a small bit. Maybe that's the way we're going to go, and we play the edge forward at 6. Again, Baird, Ahern, maybe even Prendergast, maybe even someone like Jimmer Mangan might fill that mold in a couple of years' time. It's options, and it's constant options. And I don't care if Ireland want to go 8-0 on the bench, jokes aside, like, fair enough. They want to go 6-2 going forward, fair enough. I can see why they would. And we could probably talk about Harry Byrne getting in over Kieran Frawley in a 5-3 bench. Does that change things? Are they just trying to get minutes into him? Is Frawley more of a 6-2 option that they've always been looking at? We don't know, but we could discuss Kieran Foley and Ireland out halves and make it into a provincial debate that could go on for about 2 hours here, but we won't because there's been enough of those already this season. I will move on to Italy because they deserve their fair level of coverage as well tonight. And apologies in advance if I absolutely butcher each and every one of these names. So we'll start at fullback with the returning Ange Capozzo of Toulouse. Lorenzo Pani and Monte Ioane are on either wing. It's Ignacio Brex and Tommaso Menicello, the Old Benetton centre pairing. Paulo Garbisi's partner Stephen Varney at halfback. There's a start at the front row for Danilo Fischetti, Gianmauro Lucchesi, and Pietro Ceccarelli. Nicola Canone and Federico Russa make up an All Benetton second row pairing, and there's an All Benetton back row as well of Alessandro Isacor, Manuel Zuliani, and captain Michele Lamero. On the bench, they have Giacomo Nicotera, Miko Spagnolo, Shisu Soloci, oh God, Andrea Zambano. Ross Vincent is there ready for his potential debut. Martin Pedrello is the backup. Scrum half, Tommaso Allen drops the bench after last week, and Bayon's Federico Mori rounds out the 23. Mike, apologies again for those pronunciations, but what should us as Irish fans be looking out for here in this Italian side?
So I think last we spoke, I highlighted Menoncello and he got injured in the game. So I'm going to be very tactical about who I highlight here. Joking aside, there are a couple of players which are they probably haven't shone to the level that they could at international level. And I think Federico Mori is a really good example of that. The guy's a genetic freak, comes from a family of Olympians. His sister's a Olympic hammer thrower. Like he's genuinely just like this freak. He was benching 180 kilos at the age of 18. He's just this monster, and he's a center. So if we manage to get the ball to him and get him to do what he's been doing at Bayonne all this season, he could potentially basically be like an Italian Bundiaki for us, really. Like that's the mold that I see him moving into, right? So there's an element where he could potentially shine. And then obviously Ross Vincent's had a fantastic I say debut season at Exeter. He played a couple of the Premiership Cup games last year, but he's a really explosive, very quick Sam Simmons-esque back row. So they're sort of two unknown players to the extent that, you know, you haven't seen them do anything on the international stage. Obviously Vincent's about to get capped, but Morty's had 2 or 3 caps at test level, and unfortunately he hasn't been able to replicate what he can do. I'm hoping he gains the bit of confidence. We spoke to him not long back on the pod as well, and he's raring to go. But yeah, there's a couple of interesting picks this for this game as well. So I think a lot of people are questioning Varney. Not for me. I think, you know, we're going to try and box kick. We're probably going to try and take some contestables. We're probably going to try and utilize Pani to counteract Lowe's monster boot with his. If you kick too short, I think Capozzo's probably going to be the person that's going to try and find space. It looks like a well-balanced team, and it shows the pragmatism of Quesada as a coach, because he sort of looked at the different areas where, you know, we could potentially get some net positive out of like any exchange that comes about it. So yeah, I mean, obviously Cannone Jr., Lorenzo, that's a massive loss for us. He's an exceptional player. But Alessandro Isacor, for those of you guys who don't watch the URC, is an animal. Like he's just, again, I said Federico Mori's a genetic freak. Isacor, when we were doing the stats on him, I think he was up to 130 something tackles, and he missed 3 for the whole season. He's a monster tackler, very explosive, often finds himself around the corner on the +1 on the wing, makes yards very quick. Hoping to see a lot more of him. Obviously Seb missing is a bit of a contrast as well, because the volume of impact that man goes through on a game is going to be missed. But yeah, a couple of exciting players just for you guys to peruse. But I'm feeling positive about like where we're going, because we're giving everyone minutes in this team.
And it's interesting, Izakor and his size is something you mentioned, because it was a question mark of mine when I read this team is, can you replicate Canona and Negri's, just their sheer power? And it's, again, kind of that idea of playing bigger than themselves. I think Canone is a very strong carrier for a lad with soft hands and good footwork as well. Negri the same. And I think some people are saying, could they see Negri moving up into the second row, for instance, to kind of accommodate someone like Izakor or Zuliani? So there is options that they probably haven't had in a number of years in that, tight five forwards, but also in the back row as well. And I suppose just on Quesada, because personally, I think that they schemed up a very good game against England last week. Maybe fell off the shackles a small bit, and that happens, especially in game one. Do you think it is going to be a case of, okay, that kind of attacking naivety that we saw in recent years, we're going to kick more, we're going to be more defensively solid? Is that something you see going forward, or is it just kind of horses for courses for now anyway?
I think it's probably the latter. I think, we're probably going to try and play to our strengths. England last week, I don't know if it showed on screen, but they were so narrow. Someone like Finn is going to have an absolute field day against England, right? Because he's just going to cross field kick every single time, and if they're tight, there's going to be space. So for us, obviously, we had Garbisi at 10. If we had Allen, I think we probably would have seen a lot more of those cross field kicks. But the two times where we went round the corner and got the edge, we did damage, right? So I don't think you guys are going to set up so narrow. I think you guys, certainly from what I saw against France, you've got your defensive systems down to an absolute art. So it's going to be interesting. I think if you're going to blitz aggressively, we're probably going to see people like Varney try and kick over and take the chances with the sweeper. So if Gibson Park, for example, Gibson Park is not starting, but if Casey's playing sweep, like, they're probably going to try and target him at the back. But it's just one of those where that's where I see maybe we'll try and target it. It's tough to say though, because it's a different team. Like, it's a different team from last week, from our perspective, watching you guys as well, right? So I think, I'm hoping, at least from our side, we see Garbisi, because he reads the game very well. He's got lovely vision. He's probably not as confident as he should be with his feet, but I'm hoping that we're giving him options, because if he picks them, and when he picks them right, like, we find gaps. So I'm hoping it's just Menoncello, or when Morty comes on, just tight lines and finding space.
Absolutely. And even on Garbisi, like it was mentioned, when he signed for Montpellier, that he'd be signed for a top team and that'll help his growth. And they got to a top 14 final, and I can't remember if they won or lost.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
But and that was helping. But now this year they've been really poor, and that probably reflected last week, because he did blow hot and cold, and it happens. It's 10. It's a form position. It always is, and you'd probably be hoping that Varney, because that steps up and has a big game, because he's been someone that has been got at by opposition sides. And even having Menoncello back at 12 is another probably good example of needing guys to step up, because he's been a game breaker for Benetton, and could probably be what they're looking for in Italian colours as well.
Yeah. On the Garbisi point, I think there's one element that I need to sort of provide context to. So last year, they basically had a load of injuries, and it forced Garbisi to play at 12. I think, actually, of the games that he played, I think 15 throughout the season were at 12. So for a developing 10, right? And people sort of forget that he's 24 years old. So last year he was 22, 23. If he's not getting that game time at 10, and then at international level, at test level, we're putting him at 10, it's always going to be rusty. So I'm hoping, and there's a lot of rumors about where he's going to go, but I'm hoping wherever he goes, they see him as an out and out 10, and just because he's reliable defensively, they don't put him at 12. Like, he needs to stay at 10. He needs to develop at 10 for us, selfishly, right? So there's that. Menoncello, if he can sort out his soft skills, and I said this, I think, on our pod last week as well, if he's able to just sort out his right hand pass, for example, which he actually gave to Allen, he could potentially be a genuine, like, world talent for us. And Ian McKinley, when he came on, literally the week after we spoke to you last, he mentioned that obviously he saw him in the academy from the age of like 17, 18. He was like, he could be what Bod was to Irish rugby for us because he's that good. We need to build our team around Menoncello. So not to put too much pressure on that, but the point stands, right? If we're able to start producing players like that, and there are a few from the under-20s which I'm hoping to come that will come through, like Passarella's another one who's very similar mold to Menoncello. If we can start seeing those guys come through, and obviously Brex, is fantastic centre, like completely integral to the way we play, but we need to start thinking about contingency plans, not only for this Six Nations, but moving forward, and start transitioning and start building a team in the place that we should. We could potentially cause a bit of pain,
That's what we want to see. BHH, you want to jump in there?
Yeah. Does that mean that you view Menoncello's long-term future position as 13? Because he's starting at 12 now to the Sunday, obviously, and with Maury, you said you view Maury as an Aki type player.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I think he is a natural 13. Excuse me. And if you, Paul Gustard did an interview about his time at Benetton, but specifically he highlighted Menoncello, and he was like, he's as natural 13 as he's seen, right? He said he's one of the top like youth talents that he's ever coached. I think if we're going to start looking at where this team is going to go and like where the best sort of partnerships are, we can get Menoncello just sitting on the 13 channel, making the defensive decisions, because his anticipation for the tackle and his eye for the attack, like the opponent's attack, is very good. Then that frees up players just coming in on hard. Like Maury doesn't have to think much, almost like Manu, when he was playing against New Zealand, he just doesn't need to think much, and what he's going to do. He's going to attack the 10 and the 12. So I think his long-term development, he'll be a 13 for us.
Just on
Jack.
Federico Mori as well. Check out this man's hair. He has got the best ringlets I've ever seen. He is one handsome man. Federico Mori, look at him. That's poster boy for Italy right there. He is quality. Yeah,
he's a good looking chap, bless him. If only looks helped last week. There was a 2-on-1 where he came on hard against England, and he opted to go inside. But if he went outside, there was 2 more Italian players on the wrap. So like little things like that,
A couple of those last week, I thought, Italy just made the wrong option, and it would have been
would have been a different
interesting.
Yeah, it would have been a different atmosphere there as well.
Just a final question for you, Mike, on Italy before we kind of look into predictions, because I think a lot of people have unfairly said, oh, well, Wales are the weakest team because we don't recognise half their players, but like Italy have a new head coach as well. And reality is when Italy played Wales last year, when there was pressure on, they really struggled to adapt. And I understand, full contact paints a picture of being robbed a small bit, and to their credit, they were the wrong side of the referee on the day. But how do you see Italy's campaign unfolding after this? Like historically their 3 toughest games first up. But if there's signs of life last week, surely there'll be positivity heading into March.
Yeah, I think first of all, like just because I said it on our pod, I'm going to say it again. Like, I don't want to talk about the refs as an Italian fan, as a rugby fan. I think it's important for us just to sort of bury any negativity we feel towards decisions made. So, but to your point, right, I absolutely think that if we're able to do equal like length steps each game, so we're taking it step by step, right? And one of my favorite quotes is, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with 1 step, right? We've taken 1 step in the right direction. As long as it's of equal measure this game, and we do that to the last 2 let's be honest, very winnable games based on what we saw last week. Obviously, it changes week to week. We could see Wales absolutely romp England, and I feel less confident. But like to what we've seen, very winnable games. And if we can take stuff from each game and learn, a little bit more about our team, our positions, the cohesiveness of the actual team, then I think I hope that we're in a position where, nerves don't get to us. We're not playing at home. It seemed, like you said in the documentary, it was there was a little bit of like fractious relationships maybe between the coaches and the players come the Wales game, and it just seemed like we're in no there's no pressure on us. No one expects us to win, right? Like that's the sad and sort of the good part of a young Italian team. But I think we have the capabilities to beat any team, and I mean that without an ounce of irony. If we look at when we beat Wales 2 years ago, we had 0 handling errors. If we're saying that is the absolute best we played, we gave away 3 penalties that game, zero handling errors. If that's the best we could play, this team that we have now at 70% would absolutely destroy the Italy that we had 2 years ago. So like the team is better, but we need to play to our potential. And if we play to our potential, then I genuinely believe that we could probably hurt any team. That's sort of a genuine feeling.
Yeah, that's great, and hopefully we do get to that point. But before we kind of move off and wrap things up, I want to look at how we see the game unfolding. I start with yourself, Jack. Like most people have put Ireland down for a bonus point win because above all else, Ireland score tries. It's what they do every time they click. How do you see the game unfolding from just a game perspective, not necessarily just an Irish perspective?
Yeah, it's funny just listening to Mike and thinking about like where the two teams are, because we talked about all the changes, and there's only a few, I'd say, in the Italian team from sort of regular kind of, in terms of like regular starters. I know Capuzzo comes in and replaces Alan, but he's been there, he's done it, he's no slouch again. It's actually Italy probably coming with the settled side and with fewer changes in the Irish team. So it's gonna be interesting the first kind of 5-10 minutes to see, because the first 5-10 minutes of last year's game was very much Italy starting well. I think they got the first score, didn't they? I think it might have been Varney. So that's going to be really, really interesting, because I think Italy may have scored the most amount of points against us in that championship last year, because it feels like France scored about 17, Scotland got 7. Can't remember what Wales got, but it doesn't really matter.
Wales got 7 as well.
Wales got 7, Scotland got 7, England got
16. And
16,
1 second.
like
this is going to bug me if I don't look it up.
I'll say it's 24, but I'm not confident with that.
I think it was 20. I think I just looked it up. But it was,
20.
20.
Yeah. So that's I think that's where I think Italy have made the biggest amount of improvement is their attack, and I think that could be one area that is a concern for me, at least, because apart from Nash is quick, but Hugo Keenan just glides across the surface. But I just think they've got pacey, they've got pacey backs in Pani, Capuzzo, and Ioane. So they've got some real pace. If they can get outside Henshaw, then Henshaw can hold his own. But it's just whether or not the wingers bite in, and whether or not if they can get to the edges, because I think Ireland probably hunt in packs more than blitz, sort of out and out. But it really depends. If Italy can get outside into that kind of 13 channel, then they could cause us some problems. I think what will ultimately come down to is, this is no great analysis at all, but the back row. I just think it's just such a strong, settled back row. It's the Leinster boys back in 6, 7, and 8. Loads of pace, loads of handling, loads of footwork. I think it's just going to be, those guys are just going to be getting, hopefully for Ireland's sake, getting turnovers and stopping the Italian attack before they can get into a bit of multi-phase. Because I think that's genuinely somewhere where Italy can hurt us. I think Ireland's biggest strength we saw last week was the kicking game. So if Lowe manages to just boot the ball down and stop it on a sixpence right before the dead ball line, then it's more luck than design. But it's you roll the dice and you see what you get, and more often than not, Lowe, Crowley, Keenan, they've all got good kicks on them. So it's going to be. I really look forward to the Italian games because they're genuinely very exciting to watch, and it's good fun, and like that's just going to have more people watching it. More Italians watching it as well, and just sort of a good advert for the Six Nations. So I hope that Italy come out strong and give us a good game. I just hope they don't beat us. That's all.
That's fair enough. Mike, what would be your expectations as an Italian fan, or what would be your hopes as an Italian fan?
I think if you were to ask me, would I be happier with a winning? As a try bonus point or a losing bonus point? Losing bonus point because it shows that we've been competitive. Like that. Like someone asked me that against England before we played them as well, and I gave the same answer. Right, always a losing bonus point to make me happier. But I think to obviously Jack's point, I think that's exactly how Ireland would play. I think what Ireland are going to do is they're going to kick long, suffocate defensively. Like I said, you guys have it down to an absolute art at the moment. Try and force knock-ons, and then do what you did against France in the second half, which was back your set piece and go to maul and just obliterate. Right. So there's that. If we're able to compete with our boot, right? So if we do utilize Pani in the backfield, a similar way that you guys use Low, that like I said, that could nullify it. Not nullify it because I think Low probably has an advantage, but it will make it a lot more competitive. And then we need to do exactly what Jack said, is get around the corner, because that's where France hurt you guys last week as well, is when they managed to get quick ball and get around the corner. So if we're able to do that, I'm hoping we can score, some nice tries and stay competitive. And again, it's all contingent on how we can slow the ball down. If we can slow the ball down, great. If not, it's going to be a very long day for us. And I mean, a very long day for us. So that's sort of. But obviously, this is someone with an untrained eye. Quesada's a lot smarter than I am. I'm sure he would have put some provisions in, but I'm hoping he would have put some provisions in place to stop that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And BHH, I'll come to you finally for an Irish eye. Like, what are you hoping to see, both on an individual basis, but also as a team and performance wise?
I think there's four things I'm looking for. Three of them from an Irish perspective. The first one being just some form of attacking cohesion and improvement. This combination hasn't played all that much together. I think it's one game between Crowley, McCluskey, and Henshaw. So Crowley started off really well, replacing Sexton last week. I want to see, that up another level, and I'd like to see Calvin Nash get involved a little bit more. I think in the first half last week, he was a little bit like Rob Balakoon, kind of staying off on his wing, and it wasn't really until he got involved that things started going his way. So they should both get a huge amount of confidence from last week, and I want to see that, step up a level. I think it's the lads have both pointed out the midfield defense, both inside with McCluskey and Henshaw inside, how they coordinate, and then outside Henshaw as well. I think that's going to be a big thing that we need to look at and focus on, and will be intriguing. And then just continued improvement in the set piece. The line out was terrible at the World Cup. It was much better last week. It would be nice to see that continue. And then just the other thing I'll be looking at, mostly from an Italian point of view, is like we blew them away at the Ruck time last year, especially in the autumn. We did that to France last week, and if we continue to do that, especially with Doris and Conan and Baird just flooding the breakdown, and McCarthy not so much poaching but just blowing people off the ball, then are Italy going to handle that? Even when Italy were improving in the last couple of years outside of last week, they always struggled against England, who were deadly at that. So I think that's going to be the keys, and that's what I'll be looking for. And hopefully, it's a good, open, exciting game.
Yeah, and I'll come back to you there, BHH. So for the start of the predictions, who do you see winning and how much roughly?
Yeah, I think Ireland will be relatively comfortable. I think it'll probably be a good thing for Italy if they stop Ireland getting a bonus point, but I'm not 100% sure I see that happening. And it could be the case of we'll be 2 or 3 scores ahead and then let one or two in at the end. You know, that sort of, it'll be relatively comfortable.
Yeah, I do think Ireland will get that bonus points. You said I was doing research today, and like they've scored 50 points in this fixture 4 times in a row in the Aviva. That goes back since the bonus points was introduced. So it is almost expected now that Ireland will rack up a score in this game, even with the changes. So I do think they'll be strong enough there. Mike, how do you see it going?
Yeah, it's hard to argue against it, really. I obviously knew you would ask me for the prediction, and I think, like I said, if we get a losing bonus point, great. I do think you guys will get a bonus, a win. Well, obviously, winning bonus point. I think if we can, I think if it's going to be sort of 28, 21, I'll be very happy. That's obviously best case, but if we can't slow down your ruck, it could be like 20, 30 ahead. That's the sad fact,
Mike, if it was something like 20 points to 8 and you stopped Ireland from scoring 4 tries, that's continued improvement in defence, but obviously not a losing bonus point. Is that considered improvement? Or
it's tough, right? Because like you said, if we're looking at previous experience, like it's going to be 50 as sort of the average. That said, I don't think we have money in the bank for valiant performances anymore. We need to compete, we need to put pressure, and we need to show that we can score, because last year we had valiant efforts. At times we were a little bit unfortunate, but we still came up, second from the bottom of tries scored. So like, actually, if we're going to try and show genuine improvement, we have to concretize on our opportunities, because we create so many of them. We're just terrible at our red zone efficiency. We're just terrible at finishing that last pass, which is more often than not. So like, if we're able to actually start fixing those, and we score tries against the best teams like yourselves, and I said to the boys, if we got the exact same result as last year, this year, that shows growth, as in like it's a step of equal measure. What I don't want is for us to have another one where, we've had a great game like we did against France last year, and then we get blown away by England. So I just want a defensive masterclass. Even like I said, for me, if I want a win right now is a bonus point, especially after what you guys did to France, which would put them under a little bit of pressure when we go over to them, the following week. Well, after the bye week. So yeah, for me, we have to perform.
Yeah, I think nothing says that more than Michele Lamaro's reaction in the press conference last week. Right, he was gutted. Like he was like fuming, wasn't he? He was like, this is he was like, it was, I know it's been said before, but he was like, this is so he knew that game was there for the taking. And I think on the point, if you deny us a try bonus point, I think that's massive, because we've got try bonus points in basically like all of our last, not all, but pretty all but one in every kind of, all but one in every Six Nations for the last like 3 years. Is it, Kaelon? I know you.
I think it was something like 10 out of 11 games or 9 out of 11 games, I think.
So like, I know it, and for the purist, you're going to be like, well, no, we want to win, and that's obviously what all the players are going to be thinking. That they're going to be like, right, how are we going to stop Ireland? And I think if you stopped us from a try bonus point, I'd say, like, yeah, fair play, you worked like absolute absolute horses to try and to
To your point there, though, I think you guys as rugby fans who follow the URC and who understand, that there has been some improvement behind the scenes of Italian rugby. That's fine, but the Six Nations dominated by people who don't follow, league rugby and the sad fact is they just look at scores and they base their opinions on it. So when I say we don't have money in the bank, we don't. We're poor at the moment, so we need to show casual fans. And I think actually, what Crowley did last year, in particular for Italy, I went to Rome last weekend, and 65,000 in the stadium. It was ridiculous, right? I've never seen atmosphere like it. There was people who couldn't get tickets that were in and around the stadium just for the atmosphere. It was insane, right? That's what a little bit of attractive rugby has done to Italian rugby in Italy, but to like casual fans and stuff, that means nothing to them. They just see a score, they make their opinion on a score, and that's the sad truth. So if it's 28, as you said, sadly I'd be happy because I know, but for the majority of the fans that just watch the Six Nations as a spectacle, again, like we'll get tarnished with the same brand. So like we just need to make sure that we're showing equal steps each game.
Does that mean then that a score line of say like 55-35 or something, where there's rakes of tries and buckets of points, but it's not at all close, would be better?
I mean, we'd get, if it's 35, I assume we'd get a bonus point, but no, like I would rather, I genuinely, I would rather it be 7-0 win. Like just to show that we have the capability of keeping probably the best side in the world, right? Regardless what the rankings say, probably the best side in the world out. That for me would be a massive victory.
Yeah. I think if Italy if you can get a couple of tries, if you can get a couple of scores and say like, right, well, you've equaled the French from last week and they were at home and they were dreadful. In all likelihood, Ireland are probably not going to play as well as they did last week, because in all likelihood, you don't get those performances back to back. The All Blacks maybe did that in 2015, but that was just because they were a machine. So, this week, loads of changes. Italy need to come flying out of the gates. If Italy get 15, 20 points, that's very good. In Dublin, that's very good. Yeah, if you can keep Ireland below 40, I think that's incredible. I think, honestly, because I think that's just the way, this is the way that Italy-Ireland games go. Like Ireland just keep firing, and just that last, I don't want to say the last 20 minutes, like it's some thing that always happens, but that is when, Ireland in particular tend to, reach, go in that last 20 and get those extra couple of two, 3 scores that just make it a wee bit more shiny on the scoreboard. If it can be tight at halftime, you can be within 10, 15 points at halftime. That's probably good going, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, but I think that's fair. I think
it depends. It depends if it's close, because if it's close, then the Italians will feel like they're in it. But if it gets out of their hands, then it could be a big scoreline. I think that's probably quite insulting towards the Italians, but it is just
you're right.
I think it is just the nature of Ireland could just click, and if they click, we've seen what they can do. But I'm expecting much more of a sort of a tighter game than most expect, I think, because I think Italy have got some good weapons there, and I think they're a little bit more pragmatic than they have been in previous years too.
Yeah, and just sort of one final point from me. I think you hit sort of the nail on the head there. Traditionally, we ship too many points in the first 20 minutes. Like games are away from us in the first 20 minutes, and we definitely saw that in the World Cup. We came, so. We just got hammered against the last 2 teams in the first 20 minutes. We need to work out a way of becoming better right at the start and not be a second half team like we have been. Even last Six Nations, it happened exactly the same way against England, against Wales. That's the way we played. So if we're able to sort of, seal it up a little bit in the first 20 minutes and make it a bit of a dogfight, and we're in the game, we'll take a lot out of that. And we'll definitely play better for it. And like you said, if it is the fact that the last 10-15 minutes, you guys, we're fatigued and you guys just absolutely like smash us around, then we've done our job up until that point. But I just want to make sure that we're not conceding a try in the first sort of, was it 3 minutes last year? Like it's just not acceptable. Like we can't play like that. We can't play like that against the best teams. We'll get punished.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fair. Jack, finally with you, who's winning it? How much?
I think Ireland will win it. I think they'll probably, I don't know. I think they'll get in the region of like high 30s. I think that'll probably be. That's probably a kind of a fair reflection. I think that Italy might get 10 to 15 maybe in Dublin. I think that'd be a fair kind of. Well, I don't want to say fair. That seems odd. That seems harsh. But I think that'd probably be the kind of. I don't know what the bookies are having it at, but I think that would be fairly. If you're putting money on it, that would probably be the boring answer, because I think that probably is genuinely how it'd end up. Because I don't see us putting 50 on these guys. I really don't. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that's where we will leave it for tonight, lads, because there's an under-20 game that I'm sure a few of us want to go watch, and go watch Freddie Pucciarello's son started out half originally.
You had to just put that in there at the end, didn't you?
I had to put that one in, especially with the game being in Cork. So we will leave it at that. Thanks again to Jack, to BHH, and to Mike for joining me this evening. Remember, you can catch the game on Virgin Media 1 or ITV or whoever your local broadcaster is from 3 p.m. Irish time on Sunday. Elsewhere this weekend, on Saturday, we have Scotland taking on France at 2:15, and later England host Wales at 4:45. And we'll be back on Sunday with our weekly review show of the tournament, so stay tuned for that. Well, next week, with the next part of our My Life in Rugby series, as I chat to Munster centre Alex Nankerville. So, thanks at home to everyone for listening. If you like what you see or hear, please do like, subscribe, leave a review. It all makes a difference. And I'll leave the links for all the lads' various channels down below. But for now, and until next time, take it easy.